Hi, everybody. Welcome to the QB School. I'm JT O'Sullivan, and I am fired up for this episode. I've been waiting a long time to do this one for a handful of different reasons, but we are making a turn. Pro Bowl week. Got a little bit of time between games. Be able to go a little deep dive down the rabbit hole here as far as things that I really love, things that I'm fired up on. We're doing a book review. What? I can hear the record stop. Don't leave. Okay, I'm going to try to make this as entertaining as possible. But this is something that's really important to me. I'm excited to share it with this community, the QB Schoolers. It's going to be good times. I'm excited. Let's dive into it. Welcome to the QB School. That was the library edition. All right, so what I'd love to do here is kind of walk back a little bit as far as things that I love. Reading, obviously, show takes place in the library. It's an important thing for me. Now, right out the gate, people always ask me, are those books real? Yes, they're real. Have you read them all? Just about a handful over here that my mom gave me that I haven't gotten to yet, but we'll get to eventually. But this show specifically, book review. I went on a deep dive this year. Bill Belichick books. First year as a high school football coach, first year as a coach. And so just looking for some sort of resources. I spent a few weeks on the practice squad for the New England Patriots, so I have a little bit of personal experience with the Patriots organization. Bill Belichick, know a little bit about how they run things on a day-to-day operations, but by no means spent years there. And so I was looking to just kind of keep learning. I consider myself a lifelong learner. That's why it's important to me to continually be reading, be about books, be about spreading the message, how important it is to read all the time. And so this is an opportunity for me as this channel continues to grow in kind of a lull with the NFL season, Pro Bowl weekend. You kind of dive in, take a little bit of a different turn. So this is a different turn. Now, I'm not going to say that I'm going to stop doing these book reviews as we move forward, especially in the off season, because I think that they are, to me, they're interesting. And I like this whole channel is built on me covering things that are interesting. And so I want to share it. So today we're going to do a deep dive. I went deep dive here, really December through January, as far as what I was reading, really hit a number of these books. I'm going to dive into it. Basically anything I could possibly get my hands on that I hadn't already read about Bill Belichick. And so a bunch of new content has come out recently. I'm really excited to share it with y'all. Let's dive into it and get into the books. The first one we're going to do is the strategy concepts of Bill Belichick. And the reason we're going to do this one is because it's thin, easy read, but also because it really cuts to the point, and it's one of those things where it's so well written that I'm probably going to use elements of it in an undergraduate class I teach at the University of San Diego, Leadership in Sports. And really the essence of this book, broken down into three parts, is culture, performance, preparation. And so everybody knows, many people know, the Patriots way, do your job mantra that they instill in the culture. But I thought that this went just a little bit deeper than that for me and gave some kind of cool insights, peek behind the curtain as far as things that I hadn't heard before that I always like those kind of nuggets. Things like there's no I in team, but there's an I in win. And this idea that you need to balance this capacity for individual performance. You need to understand how important your individual performance is, but also hold the fact that you're part of a group, part of a collective, trying to have an overarching goal that I think the New England Patriots get that sort of buy-in immediately. Now, everybody knows that they prepare at an elite level. They do all sorts of game situations, situational football. They're at the best at across the league for 2 decades now. But there were some cool nuggets here that I really liked as far as the preparation, as far as they went into, everybody knows how adaptive they are, how they kind of have these great kind of second half adjustments. But for me, it was kind of cool to see a kind of a macro picture of why Bill Belichick is that way. And now a number of books dive into this, but this really does kind of a case study, kind of really fine microscope about exactly why. And it's really because he's done such a deep dive. He's got a great history of the game because of his dad, because of how long he's been in the game, because he values the history of the game, that he understands that the game is a changing game. It's not just now, hey, oh my gosh, the game's changing. There's so many rule changes. It's evolving to be so quarterback centric. The game has always been changing. So he's intentional about being on the forefront of change. He's never been afraid to try new things, to go out of the box, to see his decision making, tethered to different types of strategy. I think many people think back to that 4th down in Indy that didn't go their way. I want to say it was like 2009 back in the day, about and how his kind of decision making was on the forefront of really being more aggressive on fourth down and looking at the numbers and being analytical and all of those things and not letting the outcome determine whether the quality of the decision. And so it was fascinating for me. Love the fact that they're an adaptive organization that had done it really successful for a really long time. Highly recommend that book. Easy read, simple. I want to say like $6-7. Really simple. I'm going to try to do my best to put the links in the video below so y'all can have an easy way to come in and purchase the books if you're interested in it. But this was the first one, just kind of baby step into exactly Bill Belichick, what they're doing in New England. Really simple read, but really high quality read too. Next one I want to do is Bill Belichick on Football. Now this is a different kind of book, and so be kind of bizarre how I kind of talk about this, but really this isn't kind of a narrative story. There is no arc. It really kind of jumps all over the place, but this is essentially Bill Belichick's own words. This is just like a collective aggregate kind of compilation of his responses to questions, and it seems like they pulled them from all sorts of different places, but mostly from press conferences. So it's like having a conversation with him. You just don't necessarily know what the conversation is about because it jumps all over the place all the time. Sometimes you can tell it's right after a game, right after a tough loss, right after a big win in the off season, and it's just choppy, but it's his words. It's not necessarily someone analyzing it or him not being part of a book. These are his words. They're all quotes. It's essentially all it is a massive Q&A. So it's fascinating in that regard. I really enjoyed it there, and you're able to kind of jump around because it's not a story with an arc per se. It's kind of just his response to all these different questions. They try to chunk it, but because of how it's put together, it comes across as a little chunky, choppy to me, almost kind of like whitewater rafting type thing where you just feel like you're being jolted around as far as the content. But the actual words, it's like having a conversation with him because he's talking. And very rarely, do you see him talk that long anywhere, if ever. And so that part of it was cool for me. It was just a different thing. I wasn't expecting that when I opened up the book. So probably my own fault for not doing the due diligence. But if you're looking to have a conversation with Bill Belichick, I recommend this book. It's just a bunch of his answers, talking ball, talking philosophy, talking strategy. Fascinating in that regard. But if you're looking for a smooth beach read, it's going to make real easy sense all the time. That's not it. This is Bill Belichick, go, talk. And so, you just don't see it very often. That's why I thought it was kind of fascinating to be able to kind of pick and choose what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to read, and kind of follow along. But there are definitely times when all of a sudden we'd be talking about the preparation for a week 13 game, and I don't even know what year this book is, so it's just choppy in that regard. But as far as having a conversation with him, really cool. Next one I want to talk about, Ian O'Connor, Belichick. This to me was one of my favorite ones, was the favorite one that I read most recently. It's thick, right? Like there's nothing thin about it. It's a pretty comprehensive read as far as the story arc of, his childhood all the way up to present day. I think it was written maybe last year, come out pretty recently. Ian O'Connor, ESPN writer. Bill Belichick wasn't involved in this book, so it's a little bizarre in that regard. And so you can tell they don't talk to everybody. He talks to a lot of people. A lot of people are either named sources or unnamed sources, and it's comprehensive. And I thought it was fascinating. And to be honest with you, I think it probably I already like Bill Belichick for a number of different reasons. It probably gave me kind of a better kind of comprehensive understanding of just how complex the guy is. We all think football wise he's complex, organizational wise complex, but these guys, it's not the easiest life, not to make excuses, but you're spending all your time doing football. Maybe you lose sight of other things that they value or you value as a human being. And this book does a pretty good job of shedding some light on that and understanding it's a complex guy. Made me probably like him even more as a football person, and maybe just more empathetic towards the human being, as opposed to realizing that it's not just this rigid dogma, football all the time. Kids, father, husband, ex-husband, all those things. It's complex, right? It's a full life that he's lived at the forefront of one of the best organizations and probably now regarded as one of the greatest coaches anywhere, any sport. And so I thought it did a pretty good job without Bill being part of the book at all. It does a really nice job to me kind of bringing all those things together to make a really kind of enjoyable, thoughtful, well-reasoned kind of book that I really enjoyed. And it makes you think, it makes you appreciate him, it makes you kind of empathize with him. All those things together was probably my favorite book over the last couple months that I've been reading, especially on the deep dive in Belichick, that I really, really enjoyed, as far as the comprehensive kind of story arc of his career. It's obviously great on a number of different things, but it really provides a really broad picture with just enough depth that you understand it and can realize that there's some craziness that's happened on multiple levels, both internally the organization, internally the person, and all those things coming together. It's a lot of story arcs. I think he does a great job pulling those things together, making it an enjoyable, fun read that's for someone who loves ball and wants to appreciate the complexity of these people's lives at the highest level. This did a really nice job. Highly, highly recommended. All right, the next book I want to talk about, Gridiron Genius, Michael Lombardi, longtime NFL pro, not pro player, but coach, administrator, personnel, all those things, GM. Thought this book did a really nice job of coming at it from a different perspective. So it's not just what does Bill Belichick think, it's what do people think that have worked with him, what are their main takeaways. And for me, it was fascinating on a number of different regards, from how they approach strategy, preparation, what was his role in all of those things, what is his main key takeaways as far as the Belichick way, things that he learned upon working with the Patriots, having such a crucial role in there. I mean, it gets into the details as far as 4-point plays, 4 minutes, the 4 minutes before and after halftime, all those critical things about, you think about situational football that the Patriots have done for a really long time. But then it also gives kind of a overarching kind of applicable things that you can take from Belichick's approach, and things about drive, decision making, positive kind of optimism, all of those things that I think you might not get just from having kind of a quick glance over it when you think of the Bill Belichick way. And so this book does a really nice job coming at it from a different angle. So it's not just the coach, it's the personnel, it's the organization, it's the key takeaways that I really appreciated and really do recommend it. I read this one probably a couple months ago, right when it came out. So excited to talk about it and see how it connected to my further readings and kind of this continual learning thing that kind of exposed for me over the course of 2019 and the end of 2019. All right, the next one I want to talk about is The Education of a Coach. I had this one for years. This one came out a long time ago. I want to say right after their third Super Bowl. And so it definitely kind of falls off the cliff a little bit as far as the recent stuff. It's not going to touch on anything after the third Super Bowl win, but it is kind of unique because this is almost pre-Belichick. What I mean by that is he was part of this book. He knew the author. They both lived in Nantucket. He gives access. It's a lot. It's got a friendlier tone. There haven't been these gates associated with what they've been doing. There's no Aaron Hernandez at this point in the Belichick kind of story arc. It's more about Cleveland's failure, what you learn, how do you become a winner with a quick turnaround, as opposed to 2 dynasties of doing it and all the things that have kind of come, the heaviness of what that means to the organization. So it's a little bit more of like a newer, earlier kind of take on it, but it's still fun, refreshing. I flipped through it again. I hadn't read it in probably 10 years. Flipped through it again and saw my notes. It was fun to be able to go back and see. But again, it's just a different, kind of a fresher, younger perspective on now what we know to be a really complex, kind of huge story arc that's gone on and really gone from someone who's had this great resurgence of winning 3 Super Bowls really quickly to now all of a sudden 2 decades later, what does it look like? It's a little bit more complex than just about the trophies. Finally, the last one I'm going to talk about, Football Scouting Methods. Oh my, by Steve Belichick, Bill Belichick's dad. Now, he is a longtime scout for Navy, the Naval Academy. And so this, to me, was a really important read for a handful of different reasons. Now, it's not an easy read. It's not. Let me tell you, this is for football diehards. Diehards. This is going to take you back, a walk through history. He talks about, it's all about the art of scouting, the art and science of scouting, real-time, in-person scouting. And it does everything from give you kind of the outline to how to do it correctly, to teach you how to do it, to talk about the importance of it. But for me, not necessarily, you get some benefits as just a football person, a little bit better idea, understanding of scouting. I think it's important to understand the history of the game and how these things used to be done before film was available with all these computer analytics, and how you could just kind of send your film off and come back and have all these kind of numbers already done for you as far as what's available now, even at the high school level. And so this is back before that. This is back in the day. Steve Belichick had basically the reputation, or at least it seems like the reputation, for being essentially the preeminent scout of his time, his era, or one of them. And it's a unique world in that regard. And so fascinating to see that, and to see for me, who was looking at more at it from the Bill Belichick lens, it makes more sense how he is the outcome of this type of childhood, this type of, upbringing, why his background in football, how he looks at the game kind of evolved and came about because of his dad, Steve Belichick. And he was a scout, longtime scout, his attention to detail, that reputation for being someone who's so detailed and all about making the team better, and really the role of the scout to give you an advantage, analytically, to be able to take on the field and use it to make yourself better. And that was the thing, one of the many takeaways that I had from playing in New England for my short time, but one of them was everything that they did was for you to play better on Sunday. Everything from lining up on the scout team to being in a meeting to your attention span to the attention to detail, all of that was to play better on Sundays and to play better as a team on Sundays. So I always appreciated that. But this book, not an easy read, but an important read, especially for someone trying to get better, trying to be a lifelong learner of football. This really hits me as almost kind of like a borderline seminal book in the football kind of space literature, because of now what his son has done. And this is really the groundwork, the foundation for what he became and how he approaches football. So fascinating in that regard. Would never have read this book if it didn't mention it in a handful of other books. And so dove into it. Was the last one I read. Not an easy read by no means. Might have to flip through a couple pages, because to the point where Steve Belichick refers to film as movies, so it tells you that it's come a long way. And so fascinating in any regard. As kind of a whole for the video, hopefully y'all enjoyed it. Totally new, I get it, out of the box a little bit. Every one of these books should be available in the description to the video. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you never want to see a book review again. Let me know if you want to go off on a different direction next time. I had fun with it. It's really important to me, honestly, to read and to be a lifelong learner, and to not only talk about it, but to model it. And so I try to do it on Twitter, on my personal account page. I want to do it part of this kind of channel as it continues to grow. I think it's important, especially as coaches, players, fans get to see that this game, there's a lot of ways that we can learn about it and learn together. So hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. See you next time. Hi, everybody. This is JT O'Sullivan, QB School. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the QB School. I'm JT O'Sullivan. Why can't I think of what the start to the show is that I say every time? Being able to share the values that I try to instill in About to start over here. Spend some few weeks in New England. I spent a few weeks on the New England Patriots.